That's probably me.
It's usually
Yeah,
me.
microphone.
I'm so glad. I know, right on getting started.
Not once today.
Until now?
Yeah.
We were in here today setting stuff up, drawing. I haven't heard a mouse up there. Never fails.
Everybody's off work now.
6
That's
o'clock.
it.
6 o'clock, time for flip that tractor trailer. There's really a section for additional dogs.
Was it Brett that just walked by?
Officially get started. Good evening, everyone, and thanks for joining for our council workshop. For those that are joining online, or maybe we'll come back and revisit this recording. If you have questions about anything pertaining to budget that we are discussing, since there is not a section for public comments at all of these council workshops, please feel free to email us. And that email address is council@harrisburgnc.org, and we'll be happy to help answer any questions that you may have. And with that, I'm going to turn it on over to Rob to kick us off on
Thank you,
budget
ma'am.
season.
I appreciate the intro and welcome, council, staff, and the audience at home. Obviously, no audience here with us today. Really excited to start our first official workshop for my first full year in the budget process. So really excited to be part of the process or leading the process start to finish. Also very excited about the way we're going to do the budget this year. So the changes that we've made to make it a little bit tighter schedule, have a little bit more transparency and a little bit more decision making in the process earlier, so that the community will have access to our budget sooner, council will have access to balanced budget information sooner, and just to be able to fold in a lot of our vision, goals, and missions that we've been working on here at the end of the year. The format for this meeting will be to go over the kind of unfinished business that we've had as a council, as staff, things that we've known are on the burner, but we just haven't had time to get to, be able to get decisions and direction from council at tonight's meeting, as well as the February 7th meeting. We'll be able to use that to build draft one, which again, this year will be a fully balanced draft one budget with revenues and expenditures in all of our, yeah, if you could please, Brian, in all of our staff proposals to council. Have that I'll kind of flip through here slowly because Brian handles the front of this agenda, and I'll give you a little bit of a precursor to what he'll do. So here's the agenda for both meetings. This doesn't have to be complete if there are things that individual council members or mayor think, hey, what about that other thing out there? Now, tonight's the time to discuss that. So, where is X, Y, and Z, and get that on our agenda. But we're going to go over the budget themes, the kind of broad, overreaching things that will affect our budget this year, like healthcare premiums, workers' comp, the changes that we made on how we classify things, so that when council gets their preliminary budget book, you see the percent changes, and one of them's up, 200%. You'll see why in tonight. It'll be because of the counting changes, right? We take travel, training, which are separate, we move them into travel training budget. So this one goes up 100%, but this one goes down 100%. So we'll kind of brief you on all of those types of things that we have as far as budget themes, so you're not surprised when you see that coming. We have a pending issue on youth council with the communications department and the departure of our previous councilwoman who was critical in that program. Both of them not being involved with it anymore, with a little bit of direction. Staff has some suggestions on that program moving forward. UDO changes, which have been on our agenda, both short-term and long-term. Give you an update on that and talk about what level of involvement council wants to have on that and who exactly would like to be part of that process. We have a discussion about assistant planning director, which is one of the positions that will be in the budget, but we feel like we have a need for that sooner rather than later. And then a board and commission discussion about all the boards and commissions that we have across the town, the viability of each, purpose and need of each, how many members should be on each, what their terms should be, term limits, appointments, all of those things we'll be able to discuss tonight, get direction from council and come back with solutions. The February 7th meeting, we intend to finalize all the items in our retreat. We do have a draft report from our retreat that we can use to finalize that out, formalize our goals, formalize the values, make sure those are consistent with draft one budget that we're giving you guys. Benefits discussion, which was phase 2 of our comprehensive pay plan. And we do have a very, very long detailed list of benefits that we would like you to consider. And as well as just some informational things that are more policy changes or business operation changes that necessarily don't cost money, but add into that kind of benefit discussion package. And then ultimately circle back and finalize our long-term plan for town center, what next steps would be, get a consensus on kind of our 3-option process on that. Again, those February 7th, I anticipate those being longer, more detailed discussions, more subjective conversations, and tonight's being more objective. I'll cover, I kind of covered this a little bit, but I'll hit this slide, and Brian, I'll turn it over to you for the details afterwards. But the 2024 budget themes that Brian will be able to go over: streamlining of our accounts. I mentioned travel and training, 2 going into 1. Shipping and postage, very similar. Just trying to make our budgets more readable, and general increases in certain categories across all departments. Workers' comp, insurance and bonding changes. Health insurance, we have been very fortunate for a long period of time. I think if we look back historically, we're only up in the teens, maybe 15% over the last decade. So we've averaged less than 2% increases per year. We don't get those numbers officially until like May. Our renewals are obviously in July, and we get it a couple months before the July renewal. And so we have anticipatory numbers. We don't have exact numbers, but based on what we anticipated last year, we were able to negotiate that down. And this year has been very similar to last year. So we anticipate a double hit on our health insurance premiums. And you'll see throughout your budget books when we send out draft 2 or draft 1 preliminary that fuel costs are significantly different than what we budgeted for in the past. Mr. Brian Lee.
Thank you, sir. So for streamlining some of our expense accounts, this both helps you all be able to read the budget and understand it a lot easier, and it also helps staff know where to record a lot of their expenses and streamline that process for them as well. So I think it'll help on both sides of the budget there. But the first is travel, training, meetings, and conferences. That was previously 3 different accounts. So you could see where someone would go to a conference and they consider that training. Does that go to meetings and conferences? Does it go to training? Then you break out the travel costs. So it got a little bit confusing. So we thought, let's bring all those costs together into one account and streamline that process for everybody So you will see a large increase in what is the newly established travel and training account from any prior year. But then you'll see the training account has gone away, and the meetings and conferences has had anything conference related taken out of it and put in the travel and training account. And the meetings account will now just be for meetings with, regional partnerships here, or taking staff out for a review or something like that. So that meetings account will be a lot smaller than what you've seen in prior budgets as well. There will be 2 training accounts that remain in the budget, and those are for townwide trainings under human resources. And the fire department has a training division that's obviously a lot more robust than the training that we have in finance, where we're just going to a conference or something like that. So you'll see those 2 training accounts remain, but they will be pared down to just townwide and training division items for those 2 departments. Similarly, postage, shipping and handling, we've always tracked postage as what we mail out. Shipping and handling and freight is what comes in. Now we'll just have one account where all those costs will all be together. The postage is so insignificant that it doesn't deserve having its own account. So just another streamlined thing and another way to make it easier for people to record their cost. Workers' compensation insurance, you will see this across every department that we go through. Some are increases and some are decreases, but overall, you'll see that the premium has gone from about 131,000 for the current fiscal year to about 145,000 for next year. That's based on those 3 components of wages paid. That's the biggest component, obviously, of workers' comp. The actual rate, which has a little bit of an inflation component to it, and then our claim history. So our wage base, we know, is going up as it does most years for merit increases, as well as the pay study that was implemented this year. So that represents about 5% of that increase. Proposed new positions that we have is another about 5%. And that's a pretty conservative estimate on those positions until we see their actual wages and how they actually fold into our premium. And then our claims-based rate impact or inflation on this is about 1% of that 11 increase. We have also refined the way that we allocate these costs to each employee in each department. So you may see a department that has a significant decrease, and that's because they were just getting a general proportion of the premium in a prior year. Now we're tying this premium directly to each employee so that it represents exactly their impact on the overall premium. So you will see some increases, some decreases, but overall we're up about 11% on the total premiums for workers' comp. In the same vein as that is property and liability insurance. Our premium for 2023 has come out to about $157,000. That also has 3 components: the value of our property, the insurance rate, just general insurance rate that everyone experiences, and our claim history. For fiscal year 2024, we're projecting about $175,000, which is a 12% increase. We are anticipating new equipment, higher values on some of our assets, such as the new ladder truck that's coming on, all of our vehicle replacements, technology and equipment replacements. And so that contributes about a 15% increase. We are able to remove the deputy vehicles from our insurance based on the contract with the county. So that shows about a 7% decrease. And then a rate increase from our provider, kind of an inflation adjusted number of about 4%. On top, so that handles our 12% increase there. On top of that, a new law was passed this year that requires a finance officer for municipalities to have at least $1 million of coverage based on our annual budget across the entire town. And so ours does come out to a $1 million requirement. That's up from $50,000. So that's pretty considerable. Both Lee and I are considered finance officers for the town. So we're anticipating about $500 for each of us to be bonded and insured at that $1 million value. And we have also refined the way that we allocate the cost of insurance across different departments. We've tied it to all exact assets that belong in each department. The people, for example, council has never had an insurance line item, but there is a public officials insurance fee of about $17,000. So you'll see that in council's budget this year. So we've done a lot of things like that, where we're just really lining up the cost of the insurance with, what it's related to. So you'll see that throughout the budget. This is a look at our fuel usage over the last year and a half. On the left side is departmental cost. So that's not quantity, that is the cost. So that brings in the cost per gallon into the graphs there. But you can see that we were averaging for most departments in that $3,000 to $4,000 range through the first half of the year. Fuel prices really kicked up, as you can see on the right side of the page, in the second half of the year. And that started to trend our cost up closer to $4,000 to $6,000 across these major departments here. So that's where we entered fiscal year 23. It's remained in that $5,000 range, but it's come down slightly, and you can see our fuel price cost per gallon has come down a little bit. But those averages that we have across the fiscal year went from 281 to 366 on unleaded and 296 to 431 on diesel. So those are 35 and 45% increases respectively on fuel. Given where prices are right now, I don't want to anticipate that that's going to drop back down to what we previously considered a normal level. So we're sticking with the prices that we have currently. I think that's probably where we're going to be over the next year. So the way that looks for the budget is we had budgeted this year 187,000. We've already incurred 138,000, and that's on very normal volume. We haven't changed volume of usage at all. And so that projects out to about 276 to finish the year. So our budget right now that we have is 275 for next year. That does include a few new vehicles. If we go back to this slide, you can see that the price of fuel did peak, and then it has come down a little bit this year. So I don't think that we're going to exceed what we had for fiscal year 22, or for 23 projected out to finish. So when we bring on some of our new vehicles, I think we still stay about that 275,000 across the year, which is quite elevated.
300,000.
I'm sorry,
300,000 budgeted. More or less.
Yeah, 200.
And I just don't know what the risk is, because it was a relatively warm winter, and the energy markets across the world got really lucky to have a relatively warm winter, especially in Europe. So if next winter is really, really bad, you could see those spike more, but it sounds like it's not a ton of money, so we can handle spikes if we have to.
Yeah.
Yeah, we can absorb those spikes pretty well. It's not good. We're not going to have a couple $100,000 impact or something like that. But we could see 10-20% over what we're budgeting if we have a winter like that.
And from a pure financial standpoint, the dollars aren't a problem, right? So we're able to, a lot of our fuel costs are also associated with our utility revenues that come in. So as you add fleet, you add more revenue. As you add houses, you add more revenue. So there's that. The biggest point of bringing it to your attention is this year when you get your books, you're going to see 50% increase without access to somebody walking through those drafts. And so when you see that, know that it's a combination of last year when we set this projection, gas was $2.50 a gallon. And so it's a little bit of under projecting for last year and accounting for that. What is that future number this summer? And so seeing that big jump in 1 year isn't we're driving more, it isn't fleets have grown that much. It's really just a factor of the cost of fuel. And when you see that on every single department, when we get to fuel, you can see a jump there. And we anticipate you guys asking that question. So know that in advance that it's the cost of unleaded, the cost of diesel driving that up. But as you mentioned, it's really the dollar amount isn't significant.
Those are all of my.
Appreciate it.
Yep.
Thank you, sir. All right.
So just on that liability, I guess, for council, let's just be sure that we let the public understand that it's not us that are taking out insurance or getting insurance, that it's basically our liability to serve in these positions. Insurance, right?
It's always been there. It's always been.
It's always been there, but
just
it's
been a
not.
different line item.
Yes.
That's good point of clarification for the audience watching at home. This isn't health insurance or any benefit
Right.
to the board. This is what the town has to do to ensure council's liability for decisions, errors, omissions, those type of.
That's a state requirement.
It is. It's a requirement, the same as Brian's requirement of $1 million, which is probably low if it's a statewide number. That's a big number for small towns, but you know, if you're the finance director of Raleigh, $1 million is probably not going to cover it if you mess up pretty bad. But yes, those are just requirements that are passed along to us, but we're trying to put them in the proper codes. That way we can track these year to year so that we can develop best practices to keep those costs low. Any other questions on kind of just the budget highlights? Not a lot of big items. You know, we're not expanding police this year. We're not bringing on a new division of anything. So I would say, you know, we may have some discussions throughout the process, budget process this year about planning for the future and some different things like that. But we won't necessarily be starting any of those this year. So some things that, you know, I've heard, we've talked about that won't be a part of this budget, but may become a part of the conversation. What do we do with solid waste? How many times more will we do that contract? It ends at the end of next budget year. So in the next budget, we're going to have to make a decision on what we do there. However, that planning process starts quite a bit earlier. So we'll start doing RFPs and RFQs, comparing that to doing it in-house and things like that. And so there may be discussions on those lines, but no decisions in this year's budget update on big government expansions. Thank goodness. Next item we had on the agenda. Any other questions on that? Sorry. So we'll move on to youth council. This has been a program in the town for a year and a half, 2 years. How long is the youth council been fully operating? But you know, a few years now, we started a youth council, and it's become wildly popular. And I think when we started the youth council, we didn't really understand how popular it would be, how big of a draw it would be, and how many resources would need to be dedicated to make it a functioning youth council program. And youth councils, for those unfamiliar, are generally jurisdictional. So if the county has a youth council, for instance, and they cover everybody in the county. Kannapolis has a youth council. It's for residents of Kannapolis. Harrisburg has a youth council, and we don't define the jurisdiction of our youth council. It is a non-competitive program, and most have some type of application, you know, competitive process, and make it truly a aspirational organization that has a capstone project and does youth council activities under the guidance of a youth council advisor. So we've kind of blended that for probably as long as we could by having our communications director help with the admin and having a council member help with the actual governance of it. But at this point, our communications department has really ramped up and has been asked to do a lot more things, and they're not available. And the council members that were involved with this are no longer available. So if we are to continue youth council, and I think it's a valuable program, we need some direction on what's council's desire for the youth council as far as jurisdictions. What do we need or looking for as far as applications, numbers of students permitted per year, capstone requirements, and administration of it. So from a suggestion standpoint, staff has done all that. We've kind of looked at it and said, what would we like to see but we didn't want to be presumptive. And ultimately, youth council represents the council. This is is purely a government function. It's not a staff function. So, we need to hear what y'all like to see. And then if we align, our suggestions would be to set up that program, just like I said, with a cap, with a jurisdiction, with a capstone project, with a budget, and to hire a local administrator of the youth council advisor. And there have been a couple that have offered to do that, given us resumes, some local teachers at the schools that have background in government and working with youth that could fill in on this. But ultimately that is up to council whether we even have a youth council.
What is their mission supposed to be? Because I've asked a couple of times, are they a formal board? And the answer is yes, they are, but they don't hold regular meetings. They're not really public. It's nobody's really in charge. Like, what do they, I mean, I think it is a valuable group, but what do they do and what are they supposed to do?
We need to establish a mission. They don't have a direct mission, but they should.
Okay.
There's no
And youth
minute
councils.
meetings. I remember at one point, we were looking for them, like, there's nobody that was taking minutes.
Yeah, our youth council has been kind of fast and loose. It's and youth councils look very good on college resumes. So the community and the high schools are looking to be a part of a youth council. But a youth council looks good on a resume because generally they do important things.
Well, I know you mentioned that right now we don't define jurisdiction. Do we even know the kids that are involved? Are they residents of Harrisburg? And I ask that because Cabarrus Concord has a youth council for all of Cabarrus County.
Yeah.
Anyone living. So I wasn't sure if that is something that we piggyback on or get more information about, but I mean, I'm looking at it and it's open to anyone, whether you're in public school, private school, homeschool, if you're a resident of Cabarrus County, you can participate in that.
I mean, when we just did the summit, Cabarrus Summit, the chair of the president of the youth council for the county youth council attends that. That's the young man who always speaks at the beginning of that. And so, that certainly Harrisburg residents have access to youth councils that they're eligible for. And the question would be, do we have a need for it specifically here to have our own? And if so, let's define that mission. Let's go ahead and have an advisor that does this type of thing. Write the mission, write the capstone, bring that to us to adopt. Have an application process, limit the number so that it is a competitive process. We can't have 200 kids in youth council and make an application that shows preference. Maybe seniors obviously would get preference over a junior or a sophomore in getting into youth council if there aren't enough seats available. But also, what do you want to see that youth council do? Quarterly, should they be reporting a project? Should there be a capstone project similar to what an Eagle Scout would do? Should they be taking a trip somewhere to talk to legislators in Raleigh or DC to get that experience? These are the types of things that we don't have well defined now. And I think a youth council, if it doesn't have those things, doesn't provide a lot of value to the youth that we have in.
No, I know, for the various festivals that we have, they've been able to tap into volunteers, a lot of volunteers from the youth council.
Right.
How much would it cost to have someone, like, what is approximately that, let's take stipend?
We've talked in the $100 a month stipend type of range. So not hiring an employee or anything like that, but giving someone who wants to do this a monthly stipend to manage the program that, you know, hopefully already has access to these. So, you know, a local teacher would be a good typical fit for something like this. Giving them a budget, right? Say we give $3,000 to $5,000 towards youth council. Say, okay, this can go towards the activities, the trips, the supplies for volunteering, and or, you know, set a fundraising requirement on, you know, you have to come up with $2,500 a year to fund your program. Figure it out. Your youth council, that's part of the experience is figuring those types of things out.
So it looks like there's a youth commission and a youth council.
In Harrisburg.
No, for the county.
I was like.
And this youth commission list, it's 20 members appointed by the Board of Commissioners that are representatives from all of the high schools.
And that's in
Yeah.
Cabarrus County.
So there should be it should be live in the town of Harrisburg or the ETJ, I would think. Rodney?
At least Harrisburg at this point.
Yeah.
Okay, Rodney's paring it down already. Right? Age range, what,
It's
12 to 18?
It says 9th grade on the county stuff that
Let
I
the
was
younger ones
looking.
get involved, 14 to 18 maybe, whatever.
Because the middle school, I
Some-
know, the middle school started Beta Club, which is
Right.
a form of that. That's brand new to Hickory Ridge Middle. So I think you could probably start.
You do younger, 12 to 18, minimum 10 members, maximum 20. Give them a budget to pay for trips, insurance.
Yeah.
Well, I don't know about the 12-year-olds. I don't want to intermingle trips of 12-year-olds and 18-year-olds that are going to government conferences.
You just limited to high school.
Right. Well, I'm sorry. And I go back, first of all, we really need to define why youth council and what we expect. I mean, I'll relate it to the Explorer Club that used to be part of Boy Scouts or something years ago, but you went because you were trying to learn something about what you were going to do in your career. So the youth council, are they learning to become politicians? Are they learning how government works? No.
They're learning they're not even learning, they're identifying ways that they can be helpful in the community, ways that they can get other youth to participate in the community, and identify ways that they can help, but also provide feedback to us from people of their age that may not be voting, but are nonetheless members of the community.
Ronnie, to your point, both the youth commission and youth council for the
Mhm.
county is entering grades 9 through 11. Are the only
So
ones that
high
can
school.
apply.
I'm fine,
High school.
I'm fine with that.
But they do need to come here. They need, and if you cannot be on that group if you're not here. We set a number twice a year to attend a town council meeting to learn.
I think they should do quarterly updates to us on what they've been
Well,
doing.
there needs to be something there along those lines.
Yeah, they should at their first whatever meeting after we receive applications and appoint or whatever the process looks like. They need to elect themselves a president, vice president, and a secretary and get on with the business of what those kind of groups are for.
Right. And we should limit that number, right? I mean, we're not going to make it 100 people, are we?
I don't even know how many are on it
Yeah,
now,
I
because we
mean-
haven't seen anything from it.
Right, so if, you know, I think there's lots of, these are, I'm taking notes on all these are all good questions. And if council is okay with us, you know, hiring an advisor for this and figuring out the logistics of that, I think that person can come back and say, 25 is all one person can handle. Then you really need somebody, or maybe it's 15. Or, you know, maybe you need more staff or more resources. And
That's a good point.
Well, I want council to have a say so. in it.
that was my next question was,
Okay,
how would that
I
process?
don't want it blindly taking a teacher.
Understood. And so that process of selection of a youth council advisor, what level of involvement do we want? Do we want just advise and consent? Do we want council to do that directly, like we do with the P&Z board? Do you want, you know, there could be a various number of ways. Ultimately, we would hire this person if we're giving them a stipend as a contractor or consultant of some sort. But certainly, this is, a youth council is reporting to council. So it's important that you guys are all.
Sure, and that person's leading what we want, right? And if we've gotten to the point, which is a good point with our advisory boards, that we need to be involved in that interview process, this one is definitely important that we need to be involved in that process. And y'all can give us 3 candidates, y'all can filter them down and say, hey, we've looked, this is what but maybe give us 3 to choose from.
But ultimately, all you really want is someone to guide them. Because the whole point of young leaders like that is they need to be making their own decisions.
Yeah, their experience.
And learning to fail. Like, oh, well, these are our bylaws. We have to work within this framework. I don't know if they have bylaws, they should. We have to work within this framework. Hey, we can't make a decision. We need to figure out how to make this work. And that person sits in the corner and says, have you thought about this? Every 2 hours.
Yeah, that's how I envision it.
Yeah.
And that's my experience is when you're advising young adults. Once you get them started, you're just there for questions.
Right.
And to set kind of ground rules. No, I can't do that.
Yeah.
You can do this. And a responsible person in charge when you're at the meeting. We have to have an authority figure there. We have to have somebody that can liaison with town management, say, and
That's all
resources.
designated.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking. We don't really have that. Who's going to be attached from the town administration to this council?
To the youth council?
Yeah,
Question.
because we can't just have them floating around again, and be attached to the council.
Well, we approved last year to up their budget so that they could go to Raleigh and do certain type of trips. Did they?
Yeah.
They did. Okay.
And April took one trip.
Oh, really?
They did what?
April took a trip with them somewhere.
Would it be helpful if we do hire that person that will do this kind of advising and still have April kind of the
It's
go-to
probably not
person?
gonna be April. We might be able to have Lee or I or somebody speak with this person. But we'll see when we get through the draft one, we've got staff requests for communications because that's a huge push for us as a town, is to really focus on communication and taking away staff time from communications to put into youth council and stuff.
What do they need? What are their typical asks? What kind of time are we talking?
My understanding is the asks aren't very heavy with work. It's just busy work, right? So like April is providing refreshments and showing up to the meeting and then has to answer questions and organize trips. And she's just kind of
But they should be doing all that.
agreed.
Yeah.
But
Form a subcommittee that does
We
the
don't get
trip. That's their
refreshments
tax stuff.
And the other commission.
yeah, but we, when we set this up as a town, we, however, ended up with liaison of April. And really the type of person that should be doing youth council, somebody who's been a Boy Scout troop leader or, an advisor over a club of some sort that understands, like, it's just not, this is a government-based club. And the person that's advising it should really have a expertise in that and a passion in that. I think that's the genesis of it was, hey, council, this council person has the passion and the knowledge to be involved with it. Well, with the absence of that, we don't really have a staff member that is a civics expert or anything like that. Certainly.
Every town usually have a youth council.
I don't know that it's town, I think it's count, you see it more
Council.
count, like for this one, it says for, what is this one again, youth council. That it's attaining leadership skills and responsibilities in the form of programs and community service projects. Participation is based on volunteer hours earned each semester. and optionally throughout the summer. So I mean, you've got two organizations in the county. This has been in effect since 2001. So they've been doing this a while. So I don't think it would be helpful to,
Have him come
yeah, I mean,
and tell us how they govern,
right.
how it's working.
I don't know
what
if
they
we
see.
reinvent anything, but there just hasn't been, there's no structure to what we have
Right.
right now, or that we're aware of, because we haven't
And
seen
y'all are going to that event that they're having in March,
things.
March 18th. I'm not able to go there.
Is that on a Sunday?
It was that card.
It's on a Saturday.
Oh, Saturday?
It's like a 1 to 3 or something.
Yeah, oh, that one, yeah.
So would it be beneficial for him to come and say, since he's the leader, and say, well, what was his name? He
I don't have the card.
was there at the summit meeting last week.
Oh, okay. And he leads the county youth council.
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah.
I don't know if he's youth council or youth commission, because I'm not, it's two separate from what I can tell.
Can-
But
Did
he's been
y'all talk to
active.
him
He's
later on?
shown up to a few things.
He sat over there with Barbara Strange.
It's always, Steve always introduces him. It's been the last 3.
Right.
And he says youth council. when he
Okay, those
introduces
youth
Yeah, that's-
council.
And, you know, we can do a little bit more digging and figure this out, but ultimately, I mean, that question is a precursor to all the other ones. If we're gonna have a youth council, or whether we're just gonna push our students to the county youth council.
Well, I would hope that the county would say, I'm going to take with that the youth council for the county has to have 2 youth from Harrisburg, 2 youth from Mount.
It looks like they do. They have representation from each of the schools and each of the areas, for what I'm reading, but I'm not.
So, I mean, we might be reinventing.
You don't want it?
I didn't say that.
I'm just asking.
I mean, I don't know yet, right? I mean, if this is.
I mean, look, they can
happening-
sit on their iPads all day, or they can go do something for the community. Why not give them the opportunity? Is what I think.
You know how Hatch is sort of part of the Parks and Recs, like, can they be also attached to some of the other board? Is that a board that we can? Can
They
they
don't-
become
they
part
don't-
of? Parks
They're
and
so
Recs?
unique, they don't really fit well into anything. I don't, again, I wasn't part of the creation of the youth council. But similar to the ability board, it just kind of happened quickly. And I think when we do things quickly, these are the problems that we run into, is that we don't necessarily define all the parameters. And it may be a good program, and I think it is. I mean, I think youth council in providing an opportunity for Harrisburg specific residents who kids are very ambitious, who want to go do community projects, volunteer for the community, do good things around here, to have a defined outlet to do that is a good thing. But having those definitions is also important, and having the expertise and resources, right? I mean, most of these kids that join youth council are pretty talented kids. And, if you just put them on a youth council and they don't know what to do, and they don't have any guidance, and they don't know, what the goals are, what the expectations are, it's kind of a letdown. So,
Well, I mean, I've always said, but I've been said, you can't do that because you have to pay them money. You can't pay them money. Because part of that youth council, if we have it, should be helping April with the website, right? Should be helping Aaron and whatever them maybe with registration and those events. Those are great things that we can get extra help. I mean, is it against them that we don't pay them and that we say this is part of your?
I don't know if it's set up, if there's bylaws that say it's community service hours and we're providing an outlet for that, I wouldn't think that would be.
yeah, we don't pay the youth council.
No,
Yeah.
I know, right, but it's been said before, you can't get them to do that because you need to pay them. I won't say where that came from, but
But they already volunteer. They
Right.
Right.
already help so much with all the various events.
And the entire purpose of the youth council is to get volunteer hours in a meaningful way.
It's certainly a difficult for us because we haven't seen anything measurable. I can't make a decision on what's been done in the past. It's now, do we want to continue to have that as an option with some structure and put our thoughts into that process? Because I have nothing to judge this off of. I have no meeting minutes to go back on.
Well, I know that didn't they come this last year and do one report to us?
They did one
They
report.
did one report, but I can't tell you what they
I
reported.
can't either. I think it's when they asked for money.
Right.
So, I mean, their bylaws say 2 years. They also have a point system for staying on it. Some of them I don't necessarily agree with. They also have a thing that says that they're supposed to have a state charter by the end of 2023. There's a lot of stuff in here that I've never, I don't think anybody's following up on. Right. And that's, I guess, partially because we don't have town staff, but partially, because there's no accountability, I assume.
I think it's both, right? We don't have necessarily a point person on it that's managing the youth council. And so what they do and what they don't isn't really communicated well.
Is that the current Harrisburg Youth Council?
That's what it says on our website.
And
There's a PDF of their bylaws.
and then no accountability, right? So we have this point system, we have, but that
Who's
is,
keeping score?
my understanding is no, that's not being done. And so really, if we don't have the staff to put on it, which was never the intent, right? So when we started the youth council, previous town manager impressed upon everyone, we don't have staff for a youth council. It's not something we budgeted for. If we're gonna do this, let's budget for it. Let's dedicate some type of resources to having an advisor, all of that. And the response at council at that time was, no, I'll do it. I'll manage the youth council from the council standpoint. That way it doesn't cost anything. Well, now it's evolved, right? We don't have that council anymore to run it themselves. We still don't have the staff to run it. So we're in this limbo of do we reform it and add an advisor, or does it just go away? Because I don't think there's any in between of, well, maybe we get Jim or maybe we get Zach or somebody trying to add this on to planning or add it on to parks or add it on to something else. It's a pretty robust program. And I think, from a cost standpoint, getting an advisor is not a problem, but it begs the question of, how, who, what, when, whether it's going to be Harrisburg, whether it should just combine with the county.
So you have 25 or 30 and you've got to get people to help. Who are you looking to get to help? And are we going to vet those that are going to help with the youth council?
Well, when you say help with youth council.
Well, what attend their meetings?
It came up that there was parent advisor, and we had never heard that before.
Yeah, so anything that we formally run, everybody that is involved should background check with Janet's office. So
Especially
Yeah.
if you involve with youth.
we don't, all of our parks volunteers, everybody goes through that same process. We have a very good defined process for it. So if somebody's helping with youth council, I don't know what that looks like physically. Are they coming in and just helping, with the refreshments and
Well, just helping with refreshments is still a problem in today's world.
no, I'm saying I don't know what it looks like, but everybody that's involved
Right.
goes through that same process.
Well, I would like to suggest that we see how the county is running theirs and then go from there.
Yeah, I'd like to, read up on that, what the county and the conflict programs are, and then kind of give it some thought. And maybe when next time we meet, we can come back with our decisions on where we think it should go.
Okay.
So whether it would be merged with one of the existing programs, or if it's on its own, how are we gonna govern it and who's gonna?
I think we have enough of an opportunity for it to be a really great program for Harrisburg. I do. I think we've got some really good potential there. But I think the advisor is key. I just don't know that that's something that any of us can take on to do. I would imagine it being where all the departments at some level get involved, whether they come to a meeting and, or they come and speak to, they kind of get the full, it's like Citizens Academy, but for youth, kind of put them through that type of program.
Yeah.
But that's key to have somebody.
I think that's good. I think at this point, I've heard, a bunch and feel free to tag on to the end of this statement, but what I'm hearing is let's check the other youth, the county or anybody else that would be, that our youth would be eligible to, and some of the surrounding communities, see how they're doing it. And then what I would like to do is just bring back, if we were to do it here, what we think it would be like. And we've got some terms, conditions, members, review our organizational documents, where we're at, and then give council, if we were to do it here, what staff's recommendation on how to do it. And then council can make that decision of, are we going to do it here, or is this something that's just not worth the effort?
Does Central Carolina offer something like this?
That's a good question. I haven't seen that come up on any of the material that in our booklet that we get, but
The ones that I know about are municipal. The county was the first one that we heard from the county, but Kannapolis, Concord, Mooresville, Huntersville, more of the established municipalities tend to have these.
yeah, in Concord's, it's concord.gov is where it pops up, but it says they're pulling from all of the high schools in the county, and it's open to all county teams, yeah.
I'm quite sure that these bylaws were just copied from Concord.
They still say Concord.
Sometimes they need to be updated a little bit. It needs to be a maximum number of people. They need to do more work. They need to actually do minutes and come to us. I'll read them every week or month or whenever they meet. And we need to have a liaison, and we need someone who can be paid a couple $100 a month to keep them on track.
And I think what the only thing, let's say we put together from a staff here is a recommendation of how we'd like to see it operationally run. We would still want that advisor liaison to understand what council expects, right? Because each youth council can be a little bit different. So it's like, okay, all of those things that you just mentioned, we want a report monthly, or do we want a presentation quarterly, or do we expect 200 service hours, or do we expect 100 service hours? Or is there one capstone project that's required of the group? And things like that. That really becomes where it gets a little bit more.
It's more than just having your name on a piece of paper.
It is. It'll work.
And I think having the liaison would dictate what's manageable for them when we talk about how many people.
Yeah.
And if the person's like, yeah, I don't think you can have more than 20 and make, or no, you can do 40. Gotta get some guidance from that. I hate to just throw an arbitrary number out there.
Yeah, that's where I'm hesitant to do it. I've never run youth council.
No.
And sometimes depends on the kid, right? 40 kids, if it's the right kid, you can manage them. Sometimes 4 is very difficult.
But if I go back to the Explorers, I can't remember if it was 9th grade or just 10th through 12th, but definitely it just needs to be high school.
Currently, it's 13 to 18.
Which would be, would almost be right, because 14 is usually rising 9th graders. You might have some 13 that are right, but it's 9th grade. But both of those said entering 9th grade through 11th is their application process, which sounds pretty reasonable.
So you have enough for this?
I think so. I think we can bring you back if we have youth council, what you'll need to do it based on what I've heard here. And pass along the folks that have expressed interest so far. If any, the council have in mind for that, that they know that can certainly be added to that pile. If that's the way we ultimately go, we refine youth council, we set the parameters and select an advisor. To then, I would say, take the folks that are interested so far, take the folks that you may know that you think are a good fit, see if they're interested, and then council have a selection process. We get off and running.
I think it's a great opportunity to get some more public participation, kind of groom it, plant seeds for more citizens to be involved as they grow older. Speaking of being at council meetings, we're always trying to get public input and get the public out. I think it's a great opportunity to kind of teach kids, adults to kind of be a part of that process and see what's actually going on.
And we are kind of paused until we get all that.
So when you say pause, that means they will not meet or they will meet?
I think I need to reach out. I mean, my understanding with you in April is we don't really have capacity. I mean, they're already established, so we can have a meeting, but I don't know that they can progress or do much until we get parameters.
And it has been April that has been there, other than one of the previous council members on that first Monday of each month. Okay.
She did, I texted, she said that we currently have 36 active members.
36.
I don't know if that's too much, but it feels like it's too much.
That feels like it's too much.
I've coached athletics for 20 years, and once you get above
Right.
10, it's hard
Did
to
she
keep.
say the breakdown of age? I know. That's good. Yeah, I noticed that she did join. So she's listening to it.
Yeah, well, she's hoping that you guys don't say just have April do it. That's why she tuned in. But no, I think it's it's something that through April she's been passionate about. These kids are very impressive, very intelligent, very ambitious kids, to the point where she kind of jokes self-deprecatingly, like, these kids are smarter than me. I don't need to be involved. They should be leading the group. But that, back to Councilman Patrick's kind of point on that is what youth council is supposed to be. They're supposed to be leading themselves and just having a guide on the side. So, currently, I think April's been still helping go to the meeting, but other than just being present, there's not much going on from the town side. And I think that's probably, when I say pause, it's just, there's not much they can do if we're just on the sideline.
So last council meeting, we were invited by someone in the public to come and they said they wanted to see more council presence. So are we okay to go to that meeting in February or March?
Council is insured and bonded and allowed to be around the youth.
Well, I know, but I just want to be sure. I mean, we don't have a quorum there or whatever, but.
Yeah, I mean, it's no problem. Certainly, it's an appropriate course of action to council to be at the youth council, just in an observation aspect, if nothing else. But we generally have cycled through presenters. So, for instance, Clay in our engineering department presented 1 month. Jim has presented. So certainly council, if they want to go speak.
I didn't say I want to speak. I just
Youth
wanted
council, or if they wanted to announce a re-election or anything like that over the next year, that they could do that in front of the youth council.
When is it?
first Monday of each month, right?
Where do they do it?
I was here.
Here.
Here,
Because the elected kids sit up at the diocese.
7 o'clock. Is it 7 p.m. or 6 p.m.?
It's the fourth Tuesday.
It's the fourth Tuesday.
April's correcting us.
Fourth
Thank you,
Tuesday.
April.
Thank you, April. Fourth Tuesday, what time, April?
Calendars that are.
It was changed.
Yeah, they're in the booklet.
Oh.
Those meetings, so the dates will be there.
6 P.M.
6 p.m. the fourth Tuesday.
And as Janet pointed out, we need to look at our calendar that she printed for us.
I know, right? And I
Because
think that's
it's all
true.
on there, as we
There
asked.
it is, right there.
We're just guessing.
I know, right?
Throwing stuff out there.
You did put that. Thank you.
All right, fourth Tuesday. But yes, I would also encourage anybody that wants to be involved with youth council from town council to do so. And there's certainly nothing prohibited.
So did they meet yesterday?
That one was canceled. This one was canceled.
February
And I think we risk a lot more being just canceled for lack of having anything to do.
Sure.
We're not disbanding it, but when I say pause, that's the.
Yep.
Might meet a month, we might not meet a month until we really get somebody leading the group.
And when is this, their application in? Does they have to go through the application process each year? So is it June,
The
August?
website still says July 18th.
Okay.
For all I know, that stays that way every year, or it just
Right.
hasn't been active. No idea.
I'm not sure what the application period is for youth council. We can certainly get you all that information. Okay, anything else to add to youth council? Perfect. Appreciate the input. UDO changes. So as you know, we went through an entire rewrite, or not everybody knows, most know. We went through an entire UDO rewrite. That UDO rewrite, although a very positive step for the town, is unfinished business, right? There are some things in there that need dug down on a little bit more, need refined, need changed, need adjusted, et cetera. And we currently have 20,000 in this year's budget for those updates. The planning department is addressing those updates internally. Zach's got, I think, 14 or 15 items that he's identified for text updates or text amendments. Rodney, I think you had outlined
I did.
some.
I've seen them.
And Zach has those available too. What we're looking for is, what do we want short term and what level of council involvement do we want short term and long term as we go through this? So for instance, Zach's meeting with the consultant just to fix the actual link node correction errors. Things don't pop up that should pop up, or they go to the wrong spot. Some things are just editorial changes that misspellings, corrections, things like that. And then some text amendments. For instance, this is something I've spoken to most of council about, but the location of tobacco vape, CBD shops, things like that as a conditional use left some gray area and made it vague. My intent is to make that less vague and make that a lot more black and white and put distance restrictions between churches, schools, parks, and, libraries, public places where kids would be subject to the advertising that these folks are allowed to do on their business. And so that's one text amendment that we've identified. The trip count and the TIA being bumped back up to 100 from 75 or so. Connector streets, fees in lieu, heritage tree preservation, setbacks, subdivision, density clarifications, and a handful of others are things we're working on now. But we don't, again, want to presume or guess at this. We want to make sure that we're involving everybody and that we're getting a comprehensive update and that we're continuing to update as we move along. So what would be, other than this 20,000 that we're doing right now and kind of internally, do we want to get a work group together. You know, I know Councilman Patrick's been heavily involved with this. Councilman Dillinger has suggestions. Councilman Smith is usually involved with this. Or do we want to have a whole council, see what we bring back? Or do you guys want to just send us all revisions that you think should be changed, and we can compile a list? What's the best process, or what's the process that would make sure that we have an inclusive discussion on the UDO?
I was on the original subcommittee work group, whatever you want to call it. And I mean, we did a pretty good job, but part of it was, you know, a lot of the towns and counties were going to take what came out of it and just steal ours and go implement it. And so a lot of it wasn't Harrisburg specific, because we had a lot of hands in there going, well, our town, that wouldn't really do it, so it needs to be more broad. And so we couldn't make some of the changes that we really wanted to. I mean,
That's just so crazy.
personally, this is near and dear to my heart on making sure that this is done correctly, and that some of the things that the community has been screaming about for 10 years actually make it into ordinances. And so I'll spend as much time as is necessary in a work group. If it's just like 4 of us and Zach meet like 3 times, I think that would be plenty. You know, on like a Saturday morning, half days, get all this stuff ironed out. You know, he teaches planning at the university. He's the perfect person to do this with, because we can say, look, this is the end result. And he says, all right, well, this is how you accomplish that with codes and ordinances. If I could get that done and implemented before I die, I would be happy there.
Well, I would like to get it done before this year's budget dies, but certainly well before you do. So
I'm happy to be a part of any of that too, because this is, like you said, what the community's been screaming for quite some time, so.
I mean, can we just not say, hey, we're gonna hold a meeting and all the council that wants to come? Is that
That's fine too.
yeah, we can do it in a council meeting. That's the kind of feedback I'm getting. You know, if it's 3 council people or less, we don't need a council meeting. If it's 4 or more, we get.
Well, I think it should be a smaller working group like this, informal, with Zach, that we can have long form discussions. And then that group kicks some recommendations up to a major council meeting with a public hearing.
And it has to go, so any text amendments that we make
Right.
go to P and Z, then a public hearing, then adoption.
But advertise it big time, let the community have input, have a public hearing, and then like we do other, I don't know if we have to wait a month, but if we don't have to, we should wait a month and get more feedback before we adopt it.
Are you gonna take any feedback in your work group from the public? Are you gonna?
Yes, I think we should advertise it and ask.
During the
them to
work, for the work group,
Absolutely.
and allow them to say, hey, what's on your mind?
Allow them to stand up and speak.
Right. Tell us what you don't like about the zoning in Harrisburg. Yes.
So what do
Or
you
like.
envision that? So I would see this as 2 separate processes. That I would see it as a workshop process, and then as a public involvement process. And you don't want to combine the 2,
Yeah.
right? Because
Okay.
you guys are going to be saying, okay, let's sit down and talk about how we change words in the UDO, go through statute, and what can we do, and what's the process for that? Come up with this list. That's where the public's going to want to come in and say, hey, I don't like the fact that small lots are built behind big lots. And that's going to muddy up your kind of just.
Do you need to hear that first before the?
Yes.
Right.
So,
Yes.
so do you hold kind of, again, a public involvement hearing on you, and just, there's no presentation, right? It's come in and tell me what you don't like about the UDO, or what you'd like to see, or ask questions, and have have staff there to basically document all of those things, and then take that into a work group with, so that's the public outreach, public involvement section, then add council's ideas into that as well. Let's, and Zach, like you mentioned, is the perfect person to do this. Very academic, and he can turn those into text amendments. Have a public hearing on all of that, get it adopted, and with the understanding that we'll probably have to do another one next year, right? I mean, let's see how these things work and get some feedback until, you know, UDO is really what you want, when you want.
Can we get that trip thing changed before we go any further? We're letting things slip by. And if I remember several years ago when we had that discussion and it got put in, it wasn't a public hearing that had to put it in. The council just made the decision to put it in. So I feel like we're losing stuff by that still remaining at 100.
Well, we're governing as if it's not 100, if it's 75. So from an administrative standpoint, if we think, not if we think, if the trip calc is at like 85, we're not saying, hey, you don't need the TIA. You just, you screwed it by, don't worry about it. We're telling them it's not gonna fly when you get to council, and they're gonna know what traffic improvements you're doing. You don't get to say, well, we didn't have to do the TIA.
Well, yeah, but look, that number 75, 72, 71, I've heard it so many different ways the past couple of years. We really need clarity on that. And I really want it lower. I really want it at 50.
Well, because then you run into the situation where you've got multiple smaller ones that are really affecting the same route. But nobody's having to do anything because it doesn't. meet
But those are all
threshold.
conversations the work group should have, like, look,
I
if it's a
know.
neighborhood that's a new street, I don't care how many is it is, if it's feeding onto an arterial road, we want the traffic.
But developers are coming in and saying, I can go right under there and get as many as I can.
Of course, they're playing a game.
Yeah, right. So,
I would
Codes
talk.
are all about playing the game. That's why you get Zach in here. You go, hey, Zach.
So these top two are fast tracked because one was a administrative error.
Yep.
There was no legislative change to the trip count. So whatever that was previously, that's fast tracked. I'm not sure where it's at in the process. We can find out. Maybe it's not on Zach's radar, but it was on Sushiel's before he left. Because hey, that number didn't get changed, so it needs changed back. We're treating that like a typo. The location of tobacco vape and CBD is also fast tracked because I said so. So pardon my frankness on that, but that's one that we have to have now because I think it's too dangerous to go through lots of time to wait to get feedback on that. I would rather change it. And if the community says, no, we like CBD and vape shops in front of our schools and works, we'll change it back. But I would like to get moving on that one ASAP. And, the other ones I think all can go through that process and be fine. I would caution when we have the discussion of if you want to go even lower on TIAs to keep in mind that, the end result that you want. I think we all want the same end result, which is we want every development that comes in to tell us what their impact is going to be and then to mitigate their impact. But when you start getting very small, from a numbers standpoint, the impact becomes negligible. Becomes negligible.
okay.
So when you start getting to 50, even 70, the math involved with it starts to become single-digit cars in a peak hour. So the TIAs on very small subdivisions start giving you evidence that there are no changes. And your subdivision regulations now in our conditional rezoning process and our TIA allow us to identify improvements that we want for non-trips. So if we think it's a health or safety, or we say, hey, this is just already bad and you're not adding much to it, but you're moving into the area, therefore you need to fix it. Small trip TIAs give evidence that they don't need to use that. So that's why there's that threshold, is because they'll pay to do one, But, you know, if there's only 50 trips, or if only 50 homes, let's say, they're gonna be generating out of their subdivision in a peak hour, which is what you can regulate in the AM, probably 5 to 6 cars.
So Rodney, like the TIA that came for our neighborhood that said a majority of us are gonna turn left
Right?
out of our neighborhood instead of right. That wouldn't have helped.
No, but there were certain parameters that were given too, right? That were like false parameters, right? I mean, that was a false
But
parameter.
it, you know, that issue is slightly different. We can, you know, those issues in the TIA need to be dealt with, but the numbers are the numbers, right? So you have peak hour factors, you know, let's say you got 50 homes and there, you know, there's a number of trips per home based on the type of home, based on the region of the country, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So there's like 17 different variables that go into developing what that trip number is. But at the end of the day, the trips are about 10% of the total number of homes in peak hour, give or take, but it's going to be 8 to 15%. So the worst case scenario, if you got 50 homes, you might be getting 7.5 cars in that peak hour on a single movement. Because some are going straight, some are turning, some are turning. And so once you divide all that out, if that, I'll use the Hui, is that how you pronounce it? I always say Howie, because I'm a Midwesterner. But the Hui project, right? There's like 70 houses. That didn't require a TIA, but we did require the intersection as part of the conditional rezoning. I would imagine if the TIA numbers were put on that, you would say, well, we already have 1,800 cars in the peak hour at that intersection, and we're adding 7. We're not affecting your intersection. And we'd say, well, too bad, you have to do it. But now since we've pushed them to say, we need you to study whether you're impacting it, and they've made at least an effort to prove it didn't, we're putting ourselves between a rock and a hard place to then say, we'll do it anyway. So there's a certain level where TIAs aren't very effective at judging your impact. If we say, okay, under this level, we decide what you're going to do. We don't just say, you're not going to do anything.
And that was the point I was trying to make, is whether we agreed with what the TIA numbers were. That's what.
Well, the community doesn't agree. They take one look at them and go, I don't care what you say. I don't believe you. You haven't been on that intersection. You haven't been on that curve. Right? This is big picture stuff that we're talking, at least I'm talking about. The end result is we want high quality neighborhoods where people feel like they can get to know their neighbors and they're not so big that they're mazes. And it's worthy of Harrisburg. And Zach, tell us what words we need to write to make that happen.
Yeah, my caution was just as we start to go down on the TIA trip number, you start to get the opposite result of what you're looking for. And be careful on that, because as you go, we could require them at 0. We can say every project do a TIA. But every project under a certain threshold is going to be basically doing a TIA that says, hey, council, I know that you think that intersection is bad, but it's not. Here's my TIA that says I only add 2 cars per hour to it. So I respectfully decline that improvement. And, right now in a conditional rezoning, you can't look at an intersection and say, empirically, our staff who are qualified professionals in the field in this council who drive that every single day know that that's hard to make that left turn. It's dangerous. That's more subjective. And when you get into low number TIAs, the numbers just become unreliable because 2 cars might not add to the congestion. And so the TIA verifies it's not making it worse, but we may know empirically, but 2 more cars, 2 more potential accidents because it's already really bad.
Well, and wasn't the accident that just happened last weekend at that corner that everyone always talks about? And they came in with accident data and they were like, it's been 2 in like 10 years. And the lady that lives there was like, yeah, but nobody ever calls the cops.
So think those are two different incidents, but yeah, I think, was there another one out at McKinley? Is that the one you're? I
There was
think
the
you're,
Rocky River and I don't remember.
yeah, there was the lower Rocky River McKinley subdivision that the lady says, but people wreck there. So
It's like they wreck, they don't call the cops. Their buddy pulls them out the pickup truck and off they go.
well, that's what, I mean, the Roberta mini roundabout, you
Yeah.
see on TikTok. A great example of, 10 a day that just keep on.
It's not dangerous. The data says only 2 people have wrecked there.
So small, my point is, the smaller the sample size, the larger the error there, and that doesn't always work in our favor. So I just ask you, when we go through that, to hear us out when we come to those numbers. Lee, did you get a note on exactly what we're gonna do there? Public outreach, public involvement, and then a workshop. So, thank you, sir.
And you're gonna push those 2 through like some text amendment, like a next meeting or 2
Yeah, so
before we do any of that?
So the first two, well, the first one for sure. I think the second one as well. Next P and Z board will be on there. Okay. And then it'll come to you guys for public hearing and then adoption. I got to check with the trip count one, because I think that's one that doesn't have to go through. If it's a administrative error, I think it can just come
I don't
to
think it
council.
went through a public hearing when they changed it before.
So, good progress on that. After this, so we go into, is there a desire to have additional funding or additional revisions beyond what we've talked about here today?
Depends on if you can get it done before November.
I mean, I would like to get this done before July, personally. I think we can do that. I think, the UDO we have is pretty good. The changes that we need to make are specific, right, to make it more Harrisburg. And so I think we could get all of those directives to Zach and have him write the stuff up, and it's just coming through. It's more waiting than decisions, I think, once we get what we want done. So
You haven't seen my list yet.
That's right. You didn't see.
that's true. That's true. I haven't seen your list.
But let's remember, for it to be done, it needs to be in the UDO. It doesn't need to be an understanding that we all understand that this is what we would like for this development or this development. That don't cut it because you can get away. It's got to be in the UDO.
Yeah, we can make that happen. But again, if there's, we have a few more meetings behind this. If we think there is as we get into this, that we need to dedicate more resources to a larger effort of bringing in more consultants to try to help with this, let me know. But I do think that at this point, consultants aren't as good a help because they're looking at the broad picture and we're looking at the narrow picture.
So I'm sorry, are you going to include any of this, your ETF proposal? ETJ, sorry, ETJ proposal?
No, not in this. I mean, they'll be in parallel.
Okay.
But ETJ and UDO they'll be separate paths.
Okay,
We
but this would have to be updated based on,
just the map. I mean, we already have an ETJ, but the text in the UDO just applies to whatever that ETJ is. It can be any area. But yeah, we've already started the conversations with the ETJ expansion with our planning director in town.
So Rob, I mean, you said, I'm not sure, you said we're focused. I am not opposed to broad sweeping changes. I mean, if you brought someone in here that said, we've been building subdivisions stupidly in America for the past 50 years, of which I would agree, here's a better way to do it, I would be open to hearing that. So That's my own opinion, but take that as you like. Because those are the things that are on my list, not I care how many feet it is from your garage to the sidewalk. I'm like, I don't want to see garages ever at all. I'd rather you park your car, I'm talking sweeping changes.
Yeah, and
Boy, if I could go and not have your garage on the front of the house, I'd love it.
and well, and the next item I have on the agenda may help us make some of those decisions, because I do think that we have in-house a planning director that can do those types of things.
But I'd be like, 20 houses max around a central public play area. And if you want a 500 house subdivision, that's fine, but it's 20 houses max for a central area, so that there's little core units of neighbors.
Right.
But you just have to have 50 of those.
Yeah, and there's
Not my
some,
problem. I want you to design neighborhoods that work for people and not for developers' dollars. I'm
Right.
sorry, it's enough.
I would propose, if there's a ton of that stuff on your list, and it sounds like it probably is, and I'm intrigued because I'm a nerd on things like that. Zach is as well. And if you get too many nerds in a room, we can really bog down the process. Let's get the low hanging fruit while we're still doing that, right? So let's not set an artificial deadline for ourselves to have them all in one. If we can have multiple public hearings and get text amendment changes, okay, here's phase one of the text amendment changes for these things that we know we want to do, the fees and the tree preservation, the easy stuff. And we're still working out the details on cluster communities or, open space requirements between nodes, and, whether or not front doors are really front doors or whether our back doors are what we should share. I don't want to get hung up with stuff we know we can get done. Let's make sure we're doing those things. And again, I think Zach is more than capable, but if we need on that, I know he would be open to it. Certainly I would as well. I don't know what the process looks like or how much it costs, so I would want to get him involved. But I did want to get some direction tonight. If that's on the table, then we can start talking with the staff. Hey, in this budget, do we want to set aside another 25,000 or 50,000 for potential consultant costs related to sweeping UDO changes?
Well, does that mean, Ian, does any of that mean that the HALP has to change in any way?
That's just a guideline though.
Oh, excuse me.
Just a guy.
It's just a guideline.
Easy thing.
Ooh.
I mean, it is.
I've heard that. How many
The
times?
legal piece, so
Right?
that's where our focus should be. is-
Yeah.
So there could be changes to the land use plan that we want to make. Whether or not we tackle that or not, Zach has brought 2 or 3 to me already to change on the land use plan that don't make sense to him. So I would say anticipate, our new staff, new manager, new planning director, new deputy manager, new public works director. Some of us have been here longer than others and are just new roles, but it's new ideas and new positions. And we would anticipate bringing lots of new things to the council over the next year on how we can do things better. And land use plan, the UDO are on the forefront. We're not sure how broad that's going to be. But there'll be some.
So Rob, when you say that some of this or a lot of this could be done in-house, does that piggyback on assistant planning director?
Yeah, it does. It's a good segue.
Oh, nice.
So,
Trying to move us along.
by keeping on task.
That's it.
So one of the things we looked at when we hired a new planning director was, not what we do now, but what are we going to do? And we know we're going to embark on a long-term strategic plan. We're going to have lots of high-level thought process type exercises for the planning director to go to. Just like Councilman Patrick mentioned, let's do sweeping changes to the UDO. Let's talk about what we want and then turn it over to somebody who is a professor, who's very well educated in this, who's worked in it for multiple decades and can actually work in the theoretical. But we've never done that here before, right? So in order to have that capacity for UDO changes, long-range plans, economic development plans, public outreach, public involvement, summarizing all of that, the day-to-day operations is a struggle. And there's no two ways about it. Just from a capacity standpoint, we have a senior planner and planning director. That's it. So our senior planner is doing the plan review for development that's coming in every day. Every plat, every rezoning, all the paperwork, all the processing. That's what Craig's doing. And in order for me to get capacity for Zach to do the things that we want him to do that are on this list that we've all talked about here that seem exciting, we really need help and some overlap there in that department. And after discussion with Zach and Lee and what our needs are, it's really in that between senior planner and planning director level, somebody that can manage day to day, right? That can keep people working and updated. And when a resident calls in and wants to know about the how, that they can effectively answer those questions. Somebody that can liaison between the PZ board and Lee and I, the planning director, and free planning director up to do these big plans, these big goal type of things. So this is something that's going to be in a staff request in the budget because it's a new position. So council does have to approve that. However, I would like to get that process started sooner rather than later. If we wait till July to, assuming council approves this, but you know, surprise, surprise, it's going to be in your budget and it'll be paid for. And we already have the capacity to bring this position on this year financially. So we know we need it. We know we can afford it. Do we wait 6 months and then start the process of advertising, interviewing, get somebody on in September, and then free Zach up to do all these things? Or do we start that process now? Go ahead and advertise it, interview for it, maybe have somebody on in March or April. And in the meantime, we start getting our plans together for Zach to move into public involvement, working in these workshops, revising the UDO. So my request, and there isn't really a formal action, is to go ahead and do that. I have the authority and capacity to do this as the manager, but I also don't want to get in a situation where I'm in March and we're at draft 2 and I'm getting ready to do a public hearing. Council says, "Whoa, we don't want this position. I know you've done what you've done so far, but we're not going to authorize it." So I wanted to get feedback, hear what anybody has to say on it. If it's too controversial position, or if it's too quick, or you need more information, I certainly understand that. But also, I think based on just the empirical evidence of the department having only 2 planners in it, one of them which we're building a big list of goals for, this position is critical to the success of the planning department.
Yeah, I mean, of course. So this person will be over the Board of Adjustment and the Planning and Zoning Board.
That'll be up to Zach, but that is how I would see that filtering out. I would think Zach would want to push some of that off onto an assistant director and say, manage this board, make sure their agendas are right, make sure that you're hitting the deadlines, make sure the letters are out for public meetings, make sure that our signs are out for public meetings.
Yep.
All that. Organize the council outreach process when a development's coming through. To say, hey, who wants to be involved with talking about this project on the forefront, when it goes. really the day-to-day logistical things that have hard deadlines every 2 or 3 days, and making sure that you hit all those deadlines needs a busybody person that also has an ability to communicate with the public, an understanding of planning function, government function, and ability to manage budgets and people.
So does he have the final say so on whatever, or is Zach going to have the final say so over him?
Well, Zach,
It's his boss, I get that, but
Zach's the end all be all for planning in the town.
Ian,
I don't like being a mushroom.
I know. That's why we're here in the light.
What, I mean. You said you could pay for it this year. What does our end budget look like at this point?
Our draft one that's coming out, I mean, it's not completely built. I haven't made all the cuts to it yet. We've had 14 requests for new personnel. You won't see a third of those.
I
I'll
was
make
gonna say,
those cuts.
last year, I know we approved only one, but there were several others that were coming. Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, they've been asking for planning for a long time, but it was also going to be partially ED. It sounds like you want to shift ED and more academic discussions up to Zach and let this person kind of take over day-to-day stuff.
Yeah.
Which maybe is the right decision. I'll suppose that's up to you on how you want to structure it.
I mean, that's basically the summary of it for now. We do still have an economic development plan that we're going to implement or go through that will have implementation suggestions on it. I'm not sure what those are going to be. It could be they bring in administrative help to supplement your ED plan because we talked about this previously. An economic development director in Harrisburg would not have a lot to do. What we really need is most likely, we'll see what our plan says, is somebody that can do cut sheets, that can do marketing, that can gather information, that can contact businesses, that can facilitate the economic development of the town. Because we're not going to land like a county 7 or 8 mega projects, right? You generally, as a town of our size, get one of those every decade or so. You start getting a little bigger, maybe you get one every 3-4 years.
But I don't think the input was that we wanted big projects. We wanted targeted the types of businesses we wanted in town. I mean, I suppose I'm for the assistant person, but I don't want us to have so many balls up in the air that we can't catch any of them. I mean, we talked about ED for so long. I tried to get a recruitment study going, funded it, COVID happened. Then the ED thing happened. And then it was like, okay, well, we'll put that off for another year until we have a planning director, and then we got the planning director, and now we're gonna make these UDO changes. Like, let's make sure if we do them, let's do them really well. And like actually have a plan. I mean, I don't like just throwing warm bodies at problems.
We're going through the ED process simultaneously. So we're going through our economic development plan that I hope, I mean, in the deliverables and the scope that we've worked through with Zach, it was very focused on, we need a strategy at the end of this thing of objective steps that we're going to take to succeed economically. And staffing is going to be part of that. I can throw a shot in the dark and say, hey, I think if we bring on one high-level person, that'll get it. But that might not be what it is. It might be one mid-level person, or it might be a combination of, hey, you have resources here and there, so you need a facilitator. And that's what we're looking to get out of that plan is what exactly are we going to add resource-wise? Is it all staffing? Do you need more? Do you need certain networking capabilities? Whatever. And
We've
got a good county liaison for some of that
Page is great.
as well.
So I don't think they're mutually exclusive, I guess is my answer to that. It's, I think an assistant director frees up the calls that we have in here right now, they're being dropped. And right now, we're at the minimum number that are going to be dropped because we're going to add more and more to it. So if we're going to be distracted by long-term planning, I don't want to miss the things that we're supposed to do or required to do, and we're supposed to do very well. And so we still have to have the day-to-day business going, and our residents expect a high quality of service there. So if we're going to take our director who 5 years ago had plans and now have been committed to long-term, big vision, academic stuff, then he needs some support.
So what happens when he's done? Like we finish UDO, we make some changes to the HALO, we get an ED plan. Like mission accomplished. Then what is that?
I don't think your planning director, at least in my vision, is ever done, right? I mean, I don't think we ever get to a point where we're like, man, whew, perfect town. We can all settle down now, right? 5 years from now, this long-term strategic plan is an 18-month process. Then we probably have an implementation period of maybe 10 years on that you expect to achieve. Well, year 5 of that, you're going to want to update it. And you've got to get public outreach again. And that's a big part of what that director's mission is going to have to be, is what's the pulse of your community? What do we want? And in 5 years, we want the same stuff. Is it the same community? In 10 years, if we're at 35,000 people and we know what the demographics are now, but we're 50% bigger, did those demographics change, or did we add the exact same demographics in the same proportions? So we want the same things. 10 years from now, we may have people that don't want to invest in parks.
I'd personally support it because I think some damage was done on past councils. And I think you're on the cusp of either heading down the path of being Providence Road or not. So personally, I'd support this extra person. I won't say any more on it.
So Zach teaches how many classes? Does that class interfere at all with
I
him?
think he just doing one this semester, but he did 2 last semester.
It is, I'm not telling you how to run, I'm just asking the question. Does that take away time from the position that he's in? Or are we getting back that time?
Right. We asked that question before. We made an offer to him as well. And they're not mutually exclusive. That is scheduled around what we do.
Okay.
So, and if there's conflict, that loses out.
So if you get this person, there has been some things over the last number of months. If you get this person, we don't expect to see those type of errors again, correct?
A big bear trap you just threw down.
It was.
Step on it.
Yeah. Man.
The landmine.
Well,
So my intent is, or without additional help, we're not going to continue to make the same mistakes we've seen over the last couple of months. I believe a lot of those are growing pains with, just not having staff in place for a long period of time, and just the circumstances of a couple of complicated issues. So regardless of what you do with this, we're going to clean those up.
well, okay. And I'm just asking, so the last question would be, where are you going to put this person? Where's this person going to sit?
That is also a great question. Another one that I've asked on all of our staffing. It depends on what our final staffing numbers look like. We do have capacity in this building to reorganize cheaply, but only up to 1 or 2 staff members.
Is that the community room?
No, that would be, I would call that more of a medium upgrade. We could probably add 4 to 5 if we got rid of the, whatever we call it nowadays, the municipal complex. That sounds so grand. It's like,
I know, right?
like, I'm like, ooh, where's that?
I know, it's right there. It's up on the hill.
I want to go there.
But you're getting that in 2 years.
Yeah, I
20
mean, that's the
months.
thing. We're gonna make do until we can redo this building. There's not a lot though. I mean, I don't want to be coy about that. We've got the ability, Lee's pretty creative. He's reorganized our offices several times over the past 5 years. And, you know, we've got room to move people around. We can do some shared offices. We can do some other things, temporary. I wouldn't want to pack out all the sardines into the bottom floor forever, which is why Brett and the boys need to get to moving soon. But yeah, I don't know exactly. I couldn't tell you like which office we're going to do, but we have capacity to.
Well, a number of years ago, when we were going after this, we were being asked for $45,000 or $50,000 to do walls or something, right? Are we going to be asked for that this time?
Not for this particular position.
Well, I know that this position and the ones.
If we have other ones, we'll put a cost associated with those decisions. There, this is the space required for this is just physical work, right? Moving desks, like we might have a desk and a computer and things like that associated with the cost, but we're not gonna tear down walls, build new doors, anything like that. You know, I need to get a good grasp before I give you guys draft one on what can we afford on that, what's legitimately, what are we capable of adding, what's the list of need, you know, if we're gonna be able to add 3, and I have a prioritized list, look, I might want to add 7, but if I got to know where to put them, even if we can afford it, if we've only got space for 3, then we've got to figure out that challenge. So that'll all be included in draft one budget to say, okay, here's what we've pared down, here's what we think we can realistically do, and whatever we give you there, we'll be able to succeed with whatever demands you put on us, right? So it depends on what the expectations are, but based on, you know, our working relationship over the last year, I think I have a good understanding of everybody's expectations, and we'll put together a budget that reflects that. And we're staffed appropriately for.
Is there anybody in mind for this position as we speak?
Yeah, there's a couple. I think we've got leads on at least 2 people that would probably fit well into a role like this, whether or not those 2 people are interested. They might have been a few months ago, and they might not be a few months from now. So,
Well, I'm not opposed, but I do hope to see great things come out of it.
that's all we do here is great things at Town of Harrisburg, right? All right, I'll end up there. That's good enough. Obviously I still have to brief the 3 council members that weren't here. Something like this, if there's an adamant objection, we won't go too far down that road. If I get an adamant objection from the other 3, if we have to wait till the end of the budget and see how it works out, we'll certainly do that. But if the other 3 are in agreement with what we heard here tonight, then we'll get it moved forward.
That's July 1 start. Trying to work on that.
Yeah, well, the start date for this person, if the other 3 don't have a major objection, would be as soon as possible. We would try to onboard this person as soon as possible. If not, it'll still be a staff recommendation in the budget. This is one we've already vetted, written the job description, fitted into the salary schedule, projected it out. So we're confident that this one's going to be one we're going to suggest to you. Whether or not you cut it or not will be up to you at that time. Last but not least, I gave you 11 minutes to go through boards and commissions.
I know I need like 3 or 4 times that now.
Well, I know, I know we have a hard out with full team, so and if we lose any council people, we don't have a quorum. So
So
we
isn't
do,
it like I'm like here, like as if I went to the bathroom? Like,
you
You still have a quorum,
want to
right?
use, if you want to use the restroom
Yeah.
at 8, we
We're not
understand.
voting anything anyway.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, we're not making, you're right, I mean, we're not doing any additional business, but for the sake of time, I would try to get as much as we can before the meeting clock out.
Try to kick it off. You already ate 2 long minutes and I'm down to 9.
All right.
Okay, so yeah, boards and commissions, this is something that we've talked about many times over the last few months. We're really at a point now where we need to get in and evaluate our boards and set of commissions, our committee. We have one committee right now, which is Hatch. We want to try to determine what the current need and viability is of each one of our boards, terms and term limits. How do those look? The number of members, and we're trying to get a consistent template that we can apply for a lot of these administrative policies and the board makeups across all of them. And that way we have that consistency when we have to replace new members, the number of members that we have actually in the board and that stuff. So that's kind of what the goal is. So what I wanted to do is run through our different boards that we have to kind of give you an idea of the makeup and stuff. And like Rob said, we're not going to make a decision tonight on what we do with them, but this will be a precursor to let you know kind of what's there. So the first one I want to run through is the Planning and Zoning Advisory Board and the Board of Adjustment. So that's got a total of 7 members. This is the only board that's got 3-year terms. All of the other boards have 2-year terms. So this is one that's a little different. The council liaisons, as you can see, Ian and Rodney, and these are all of the 7 members. Now we know we have one vacant one here, which is the one that's appointed by the county. But otherwise, those are the other 6 that are there, and you can see their term expirations. We got a couple coming up at the end of this fiscal year. Next one is the Fire Advisory Board. Oh, I'm sorry.
Who, is that typical to have one appointed by the county?
I think we're required to for the planning.
We are.
That's
That's the ETJ.
Right.
Okay.
The ETJ.
Do they have term limits in this?
I didn't pull down what the term limits are on any of them, so I don't know the answer to that one. But we can get that for you.
yeah, the answer is no, and that's one of the, at the end of this, one of the questions
Because some of the other ones do have.
that we're
Okay.
looking to standardize.
The Fire Advisory Board, this is probably one of the least known boards and honestly one that I think they only meet really on a quarterly basis right now. When I first started, they were much more involved, but have really tailed off. But we've got 6 total members in this one. This is again 2-year terms. Rick and Rodney are the liaisons. And as you can see, all of those are the members. Currently, there's no vacancies. And we've got actually on this board, we have 2 that are actually appointed by the county. Again, I'll imagine those are the ETJ members. Next one is the Parks and Recreation Advisory Board. So this has got 7 members, 2-year terms. Altine and Ron are the 2 members here. And as you can see, you're going to be seeing at the February council meeting, I believe there's 2 up or 3 up in January. So you'll be seeing those before you for whichever, I'm not sure how many, I think they have 5 or 6. And then I know your position as well. So that's not included there, so it'll be a 4th one. But in February, you'll just see the 3 that are currently coming up. The Sustainability Advisory Board, now this is the only one that's got 9 members. 2-year terms. Rodney and Ian are the 2 liaisons. As we've had this conversation, they have 5 up 1 year, 4 up the next year. In the current year, we only have 2 that have of existing board members that have requested reappointment. We've been advertising for over 60 days and have only gotten the 2 existing board members. The 3 other board members have chosen not to reapply. We have talked to them about taking this opportunity to only fill 3 of those 5 slots, so we get back down to 7. But that's one of the things that we're talking about if we want to be a consistent 7 members across all of the different boards. And that's it. So Hatch is the only one that don't have on here. I believe they have 5 members and their 2-year terms as well. That's a subcommittee of the Parks and Recreation Advisory Board, so it's more different than all these advisory boards.
So one of our suggestions from staff on how do we come to, how do we get a conclusion? How do we get a path forward on this is to, allow us to come back and standardize these boards. We think there are a lot of open questions after all the discussions I've had with council members about the appointment process, the timeline for appointment processes, term limits, terms, number on the board, and standardize all that, as well as make a suggestion on elimination or creation of a board based on missions and whether or not they're an active board, and also to pass legislation on all of this with a caveat disbanding any other boards, commissions, committees formed over the years that we may not know about, right? Just get a clean start on saying, okay, is there an adopt a stream committee that was put together in 87 that we never formally disbanded, and are they doing work on behalf of the town and sending out flat, let's just clean it up, establish the actual boards that the council wants, what their terms, policy or appointments are, what the involvement process would be on those appointments, right? Does council participate in interviews? Are there interviews? Is it 30 day, 60 day? Let us take one board that we think is probably closest to what we want and adjust that to exactly what we want, and then apply that across the board, and eliminate anything that we don't need, make suggestions to create anything that we think is missing, all with the understanding that we have limited resources. Each board should have a very involved liaison. I don't like boards to just kind of be out there floating, doing their own thing. They need to have somebody they're responsible to. So that would be my suggestion, is to take any feedback we have here tonight, add it to what we think needs to be done, and then come up with a recommendation by the end of the budget process.
LT.
About what?
I don't know, you have a planned restroom break in like 3 minutes.
Oh, yeah, I know.
You had any
Well, I
thoughts
obviously
before Rodney gets-
parks and recreation in the zoning, those are the 2 that we have to have. I'm open on the other 2, right? That was sustainability and fire. I just haven't seen any really reports from them at all this year in my 1 year.
Yeah, I mean, fire is a legacy committee that was created prior to the fire department being a town department.
Probably makes sense,
It makes a lot of sense when you have a private,
right?
you gotta have some governing board.
Oh, I see.
But this is kind of a governing board that was turned into a advisory board. My understanding is they don't advise the chief. Obviously, they don't advise.
Yeah, because there's regulations and all that.
It might be one as terms expire that we whittle down, and or we talk to these members and talk about how we can transfer it now that we actually have a governing board. We have for a long time, but that's touchy when you're when you have people on boards that are used to being involved in fire departments and they're
Yeah,
disbanded. So
and probably another one that will be touchy is putting the term limits on the boards that don't have those. But I do support you kind of going and bringing back to us, kind of the standard that we will use across the board for these.
yeah, and I'll say, expect a recommendation on term limits based on my conversations with council and my observation of the boards and seeing some of the disconnects between council, community, and advisory boards tend to be, the boards aren't adapting as quickly as the community is. And most of that I see as a reflection of stagnation on boards and not having turnover.
It's happened. I mean, that's a very normal.
Yeah, I mean, that just happens. And also, I've seen in my time here at the town, a lot of discontent amongst folks that want to get involved, that can't get involved because boards are held by the same people for long periods of time. And those people end up being my boss, and I don't want lots of people that are discontent getting on council because it's their last resort. So I want to create enough opportunities. I want good opportunities for people in the community who want to make an impact to be able to make an impact. And I
And
think
as
term
far as
limits help that.
sustainability board, I feel like before they did some good work that I've heard about, so maybe they just need some little bit of a shake up there, like maybe trimming down the number and all that would help.
Yeah, I think
But
getting them
it's
consistent with the
I'm
rest of the
gonna
board.
leave it up to you guys, what you feel is the next step with that.
I'll say it and take my chances. I was on it when it began and we had some really good work going on and it was a small group. It was a good working group. Previous mayor was on it. We seem to be making some big strides and it's now gotten too many people. Decisions can't be made. They lack leadership and they're not working on policy. And the number one thing that has become a detriment to the town, despite their good intentions are that they have swallowed up so much staff time. And even after being asked to stop doing that, continue to swallow up so much staff time that I frankly would be in favor of just disbanding that board completely. And the council can adopt some sustainability policies and let management run those through, because that's basically what you're being asked to do anyway, but you don't have time to deal with the paperwork in between. So
that's certainly an option at a minimum. And we've had good conversations with that board about narrowing the scope, narrowing the members. So you have a functional working group and getting them a liaison into an area of the town that they can actually have an impact.
but Rodney and I have been telling them that for
I know, months now, right? And when you
every
see,
meeting. Oh, good idea.
Yeah.
Next meeting, same thing.
right? So, yeah,
These are your boards.
it's not, it may just not be the time for sustainability in Harrisburg. But here again, as I have talked to Lee and I concur with Councilman Patrick is we tell them, or Lee says, they're taking up our time, but they're not hearing it. They go, yeah, but they're not, right? They're not hearing it. So they're going to hate us, but that's what we're here for.
Well, it'll be spun as, we don't care about the environment or whatever.
Yeah, the
I don't
optics is
care at
gonna
this
be
point
that.
because they're hurting you guys. And our number one thing is to make sure that citizens are served. And if they're hurting your ability to serve the citizens, that's a detriment. I mean, look, I'm a LEED accredited professional. I know what I'm talking about here. It's not healthy.
Well, we certainly, as a staff and as a council, as a community, are committed to sustainability. And there may be ways to make that board, revise that board to make it functional and make them more in line with how parks operates and how planning operates and so on and so forth. But
is that meaning you're hiring a sustainability person?
no,
No, right? No.
Mallory, are you listening? We need a liaison for that board. Can't be Jim.
She just
And it can't-
disconnected.
and it can't be Zach. So our sustainability person, if we're gonna have one, really needs to be in the utility side of the house where, you know, we can actually do that. But in order to do that, that board would have to be reformed to be a more narrow focused sustainability board that doesn't have tentacles on all things, but actually is focused somewhere where they can succeed. I think the problem with that board that I've seen is the sustainability. You know, it's not a noun. Everything's sustainable, and everything that we do can have a sustainability component. So where do you focus? And then focus never happens, right? It's material sustainability, economic sustainability. You know, is it our buildings? Is it our parks? Is it our vehicles? Is it, and it just gets too big and we can't do anything. Instead of starting with the public outreach, public education, which is where I think they can have the most immediate impact. And you can probably move on to environmental sustainability from there. As we grow as a town, sustainability could grow as a committee and have a wider scope and a bigger staff. But, you know, that'll be up to you.
99% to a whole program rolled out on a rating system and education, like, which is the most important part that you want about something like that, and it just died. I mean, it just died. And Rodney and I have said multiple times, like, look, you guys need to be focused on policy because you're in a position to influence all those little things that you want to work on, but you're too close to it. Get up to 30,000 feet, work on policy, kick it up to us, let us implement it, let staff take care of it. You guys don't need to be down there, you know, doing that little stuff. You need to be 30,000 foot view.
Right. So I think it needs, in order for us to have consistency, if sustainability is going to be part of one of the boards that we have, in order to bring them in consistency, they have the most to move. You know, Parks probably has the least room. They're not going to have to revise as much. They're a pretty good working group. Sustainability probably is the furthest to move. You know, fire is kind of out here on an island operating a completely different way as a legacy committee. So
Was there a reason they were at 9 board members?
no,
We're at 17 to begin with. What you talking about? Then they went down to 13.
You know, it was ad hoc when it was put together. It was just a working group and that became formalized, but we never had these conversations, which should have happened at the time.
yeah, I think I mean, this is something that happened like mid-budget, right? Like in the fall, and we put one together. This is my cautionary tale, just like with youth council, of a good idea moving too quickly. Then it can't operate. And usually what happens is you get hurt feelings, right? Because people are trying real hard to do something good and they can't get there and it doesn't work. And you have other people trying to help make it work. And you get people who become territorial. It's like, well, you don't like this, you don't like that, and it just tears it apart. Right? So having a good plan going in, even something as simple as putting a committee together, which seems like it, you know, that should be easy, right? You get a bunch of good people who put them on a committee, they go do good stuff. If we don't spend a good amount of time thinking about how it's going to operate, it can be dysfunctional.
So when you come back with these recommendations on the committee, we're getting ready to, you say, do park and rec some new people, and then there'll be planning and zoning. Do you restart the revamp all at one time? And we're going to say, okay, we're gonna, right? Or are we going to go into the staggered thing now for the next 2 years?
We haven't done it yet, but I guess in my utopian view of it, we just do it. We just rip the Band-Aid off and make all the changes.
So if somebody's on there right now for 3 more years or 2 more years, we're going to do a reset. We're going to reset, and that person now has got to fall under the new thing and they won't be there. So we're going to realign the board for, is that what I'm hearing? Or you're?
Yeah, I mean.
Yeah, I think you have to.
Like I said, I would
Okay.
like to look at what that, I mean, I don't want to say, yeah, absolutely, because I haven't looked at the terms.
Yeah.
You might wipe out a whole board, right?
Right.
In which case, that's probably not a good idea.
It depends on.
But ideally, if we can, it's best to just do it all now, because then you have to manage all of these dates into the future until it's all, and it might take 3 years to get compliance.
It might.
So, ideally, you reform it, you start it, you appoint new members, and, if terms allow, and you start fresh.
But you wouldn't be hurting anybody that is like fresh go-getter, like, yeah, I'm on a board now. Like, oh, you thought you had 4 years. Guess what? You're leaving next month. It's gonna be people that are long-term. that have
Yeah, I
been
think what Rodney's asking is term limits, right? So if we put a term limit on and somebody's past that term limit, do they have to come off?
Like, are they like, okay, you thought you had a year left, but.
Yeah.
I don't, that's what we're talking about?
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, we're talking about anybody that thought they're gonna, right? If I just joined and I've got 2 years, am I still on for 2 years?
Yes, you would, is my understanding.
But if you let's say you put a term limit of 4 years on it.
Okay,
Somebody's been on 10 years.
Right.
You're asking them to move on.
Yeah.
Is what you're doing.
You run the risk of not being able to populate your boards.
Because that's why I said you got to see the numbers. If you only have a couple people over a term limit, it's possible. If you have 7 people on your board, 6 of them are over a term limit, it's not possible. So
That's part of the reason to have term limits, so you don't end up in this situation.
Stagnated.
Yeah.
And people are likely to be more interested if they know it's a fresh board, I would think.
And that they're not committing to it for
Right.
a very lengthy amount of time. Yeah.
So it depends on physically what that looks like when we start.
well, here again, as you do this, may I reiterate, just what I've said once before is that those applications, those dates need to be well in advance. And, whatever month it is, it's this month, and 2 months later is when it gets implemented. We're not waiting to actually get everybody out. You've got them all set and they're ready to go. Everybody's off, now everybody's on, instead of getting to that point.
I'd like to standardize all
I
of
do
that.
see what you're saying. Get standardized, but also, what happens if you don't get enough applications for multiple months in a row? At that point, you're hurting the board and therefore the town. Do you have a policy that just says, look, if you've gone 60 days and you can't fill the seat, either that board just fills it or council just fills it?
I think what I've typically seen in writing these is the latter, right?
Council.
So you go through a process, but if you have a vacancy, these are council boards, you need to fill it.
Yeah.
So even if it's temporary, once you pass a certain timeline of, okay, I get 60 days to fill it, if it's not filled, council can fill it at that point as needed.
It's an ask. You're asking somebody.
Yes. And here again, it should be council, because you go back to the board, it's a self-appointing board again.
Right.
Yeah, boards appointing their own members won't be a recommendation in here. There has to be some checks and balances on everything. That's how everything, there's always a check and a balance on it. So these boards are created by council. They'll be appointed by council that reflect the will of the people who elect the council. It's the idea of having boards and commissions. It's just to expand some of your resources so that you have other folks out there working to advise the council on policy and procedure and represent the community while they're doing it. Any questions on the board commission stuff? Are there any items we would like to add to the next agenda? And or would we like to maybe need another 2-hour session at some point between draft 1, draft 2, or before draft 1? Or do we think the things that we've put on this agenda?
So to go back, the February 7th would we've got retreat finalization, benefits discussion, and town center. Is
Yep.
what's on the agenda for that. Somewhere back
There
there.
we go.
I guess this board thing's gonna need to be revisited. So does that pop back up? Does this carry over?
No, I think we can bring, so all the things we said, like youth council, UDO, board, these are all things we can now fold into the regular business of the town through the budget process. So it might be something we can put on draft 1, it might be something we can put on draft 2. These might be something we're able to bring up at a council meeting in May, as, just part of the budget process. If we need more direction, that's when I would throw it on. Another one, say, hey, we've got some preliminary ones. What do you think? And throw those on.
So I have a sneaking suspicion that all of the items on February 7th meeting are encompassed by a larger ARPA discussion. And should we be prepared to have that discussion?
So yes and no. We were actually prepared if we had enough time tonight. If we get to pull, we thought we'd go a lot quicker if we did. To pull ARPA in, but be prepared at the February as part of the retreat finalization to discuss ARPA and numbers. And I'll foreshadow for you now is that we've decided to move a big chunk of it to the Y. But
Yeah, but it's ghost ARPA is what it is.
but we,
Right, it's just accounting tricks.
yeah, but let's assume we actually, direct ARPA. We're still going to have 2 dedications to make after that. We'll have about $1.2 million to $1.5 million, somewhere in there, even after the one transfer. So, we've all had discussions, and I think this will be part of the budget. I think it's been well received by council is to use part of that ARPA for the 50th costs and to do something for the community, gives into that theme of the give back and to get us back to some normalcy of post-COVID. Take that amount out, we still probably have $1 million, even without the accounting adjustment, that we need to talk about some options there for ARPA. And we have some CIP things that have been requested in this year's budget that I think fit into that. So be prepared for that, not only here, but as part of draft 1, draft 2, we would incorporate that.
And you took out the train station, right?
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, that's not really part of ARPA discussion. Did I answer that okay? You have more questions now?
You answered it in the most Rob way possible.
I'll take that in the most Ian way.
That was 8 o'clock. 8:20 is.
Yes, be prepared for conversation. Anything further? All right.
Appreciate you for this evening. Good discussions.
Well, thank you. I'm glad we hit the mark and didn't have to add anything else to the agenda. So turn it over to you, Mayor. Close the meeting. Do this again.
You have to have a motion to adjourn. You can't have a motion.
Right, so we just
Or
said
so
aye.
it's consensus is to
That's
close the meeting, right? Then I will call this meeting adjourned. Thank you.
Great.
Otherwise, we would just go on for days.